the time to make it out here. As a principal, I have a lot of responsibilities, but one of the key responsibilities that I have is around safety of 4610 Foothill Boulevard. The 9 acres of land, I'm here. As I tell the students, I'm the mayor here at Fremont High School, and make sure that everything is running and that we are collaborating with our city officials, our district officials, community parents, students, everybody who can support the experience of young people from 9th to 12th grade here at Fremont. I am also the vice chair to the Melrose 27X Neighborhood Council. Our chair is right here. If you are not involved in your neighborhood council, please get involved. It is one of the best ways to make a difference in your neighborhood. I have found so many ways in which we can tackle some of our city's issues, but also just some amazing relationships that I've built with our neighbors. There is a Brookdale Park improvement survey. If you have not filled it out, we encourage you to do it tonight because we do need feedback to improve that park. My kids play softball up there. My students go up there for practice. We need that park improved, so please make sure that you are doing that. And also we have tomorrow our Melrose 27X, which if you live in this area, you most likely belong to the Melrose 27X neighborhood. We need you to attend our neighborhood council Zoom meeting. It is at 7 p.m. If you want to know how to get involved, let myself, Veronica know, our chair. If you would like to attend that meeting, they are open to anyone from Melrose 27X. Those are some of my announcements for today. I want to thank you. I want to thank every single one of you for being here. Please come back and visit, meet our students, take our students as interns. They love public service. I want to take a moment right now to just acknowledge that all of these town halls have been at different faith-based organizations. This one, we had an explicit ask that it be at a school so that folks in our neighborhood could also come back to Fremont and so that you can build a brand new memory of this campus, which has been beautified by you. And so I want to just thank you. And with all that said, I'm going to hand it over to Brooklyn Williams, who has the rest of the agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can we give it up for Principal Baez one more time? Go Tigers. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brooklyn Williams. I have the honor of serving as the Chief of Education and Community Safety for Mayor Tao. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. Thank you for dedicating your Tuesday evening to be here with us today and for participating in this town hall. I also want to extend another thank you to Principal Baez and the rest of the Fremont High community for partnering with us and hosting us today. I will be your moderator, taking us through tonight's agenda. And so first we want to introduce Mayor Tao's full public safety leadership team. Each of these leaders oversees a critical component of Oakland's comprehensive public safety plan. This evening you will get to hear from our Mayor, Mayor Shen Tao, our Department of Violence Prevention Chief, Dr. Holly Joshi, our Oakland Police Department Chief, Floyd Mitchell, our Oakland Fire Department Chief, David Covington, as well as our Macro Manager, Elliot Jones. We'll be hearing from our City Administrator, Mr. Justin Johnson, as well as Assistant City Administrator, Mr. Harold Duffy, and our Oakland Department of Transportation Director, Josh Rowan. Each of these leaders will be giving presentations, brief presentations. After these presentations, I will facilitate a question and answer session with all of you. There are staff members around the room who will be passing out index cards. You can raise your hand, staff, thank you. If you have a question that you would like to ask any of our leaders here, please raise your hand, write your question down, and then hand it right back to our staff here, and they will get those questions to me. We are trying to strike a balance this evening of sharing very important information that we have for you this evening, but also leaving substantial time for questions. So please do fill out those cards and get those back for the staff. I realize that we have translation going, so I'm gonna try to slow myself down here. Because we are trying to strike that balance, I will be using a timer for our speakers. So if you hear an alarm go off, don't be alarmed. It's just that they're being given a 30-second to 1-minute notice to wrap it up. We will try to get to as many questions as we can. However, we know that we're not going to be able to answer every single question, or at least I'm assuming from the previous town halls. So what that means is that we want to make sure we have your email address. So hopefully, for those of you who registered ahead of time, we do have your email address. If you didn't register ahead of time and you've walked up, that's great, but we want to make sure that you sign in and provide your email address so that we can follow up with answers to the questions via email that you will have. So please be sure that when you do sign up or when you write it down, to please write legibly so that we can read it and able to follow up with you. So with that, we're going to jump right in. I'm excited to kick us off by introducing Mayor Sheng Tao. Mayor Sheng Tao is one of the Bay Area's strongest and most effective progressive leaders. Her family story, escaping genocide, poverty, and abuse, has made her into a determined and empathetic leader. Her commitment to racial justice, building affordable housing, advocating for low-wage workers, and protecting tenants can be seen in her accomplishments as City Council member, and drives her work to improve the lives of Oakland residents as Oakland's 51st mayor. Please give a warm welcome to our mayor, Mayor Sheng Tao.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to speak slowly because we know translation is happening. We're just going to get right into it. You know, I think it's incredibly important that community knows who their leadership team is. It did take a while for us to get onboarded our Oakland Police Chief, but he is finally here. Then we gave him a little bit of grace as he entered Oakland and got to know his department a little bit more. So with that being said, it's been a long time coming, but this year, all of us, we are your leadership team here in the City of Oakland. And it's imperative for people to know that, of course, none of this work is done alone. It is through teamwork, collaboration, and cooperation. And I do see that the community is the other arm. We all are linked together. It is an ecosystem. With that being said, you know, things that our administration inherited, which we all will probably agree on, is 1, crime was on the rise. 2, massive amounts of illegal dumping in our city. 3, encampments impeding upon our quality of life. Encampments in our parks, on our sidewalks, etc. And a lack of affordable housing. So that's what we inherited. Under this administration, we have 3 priorities, which you can, so it's on the screen. It's public safety, number 1, clean streets, and economic development. Very basic. We need to focus on the very basic things in order to think about our next steps. Under public safety, we have a 4-pronged approach. That is to have a robust police department, a multi-agency partnership, so that is with the feds, the state, the Attorney General's office, CHP, and the Sheriff's Department, BART, AC Transit. We want to also leverage technology. We know that we don't have enough police officers, so what we need to do is leverage technology, like our flock cameras. You know, how we got our flock cameras is that when I came in, I asked the previous chief, what is it that we need in order to drive crime down? And he requested for these high-tech cameras where we can actually see crime happening in real time. And so I went to the governor's office to ask for funding for these cameras. And they kind of giggled at me because they said, no way are Oaklanders going to allow for you to put up cameras. And so this is about the collaboration piece. I do pride myself on being able to bridge gaps. And so I worked, and the interim chief at the time worked to work with the privacy council, and then also work with the city council members. And we received a unanimous vote for a policy to move forward with having 290 cameras in the City of Oakland. These are all real time. And within 30 days, if it's not being utilized in a criminal case, we will delete it. And so that is a policy on record, and that was history making. In that same vein, we are part of a city to be a pilot program for making sure people drive a lot slower, right, or safely. And so this is our automated speed cameras, where we're going to put in high injury network corridors. And so if you're speeding, it'll automatically send you a ticket or a warning at the very beginning, a warning, and then you will receive a ticket if you are speeding in these high injury network corridor, this is part of that corridor. With that being said, the 4th prong is we need to deeply invest in our violence prevention and intervention. And this is the resurrection of our ceasefire program. I'll let, so both of the Chief Mitchell from OPD and Chief Holly Joshi from the DVP, the Department of Violence Prevention, will speak a little bit on this. But basically, ceasefire, when I came in, I asked for Kaiser to give us money. Here's a pattern, right? The pattern is me always asking other people for their money so that we can spend here in Oakland. But that's a part of the leadership position, and that's the part of the job. So Kaiser funded $500K into an audit of our public safety to see why is it that crime is on the rise when it's always been on, when it was actually decreasing by 40% from 2018 to 2012 to 2019. So what happened, what changed between 2019 and 2023 that we started to see crime rise and not come down? And so what they found was that the ceasefire program that was in operation from 2012 to 2019 was disbanded. And a new entity arose, and that was called the Violent Crime Operations Center, the VCOC. So all of the resources, the manpower that used to man the ceasefire program was shifted over. And the VCOC operated as U.S. Marshal going after people with warrants. Once we found that out, we got the report back just last December. In January, we implemented the ceasefire program to its full fidelity, meaning funding the police side of it, the enforcement side, funding the Department of Violence Prevention side of it, because there's multiple prongs. Working closely with probation, working closely with the DA's office, working closely with the feds. And so this prong is showing, right when we implemented this in January, we saw there was starting to be a decline in not just violent crime, but property crimes starting from February, and we're headed down a downward track. Now, that doesn't take place of feeling safe, okay? So that's different. And a lot of people in this space may not feel safe, and we have to get you to that point, and that is our job. But just know that the data, in which the chief will talk about in a little bit, it is true, crime is decreasing, and we inherited the crime, but we're able to hone in and get it under control. The second thing is clean streets. That's our second priority. Of course, it's a very dirty city, and so what you will start seeing is that even right before school, we sent out our team to clean around specifically our schools. Under this administration, we have a kids first priority, meaning anything that has to do with rec centers or schools, we're going to clean around them and prioritize them. Obviously, our homeless encampments are an issue. I will answer those questions if you put in a question for the homeless encampment on what we're doing for homeless encampments. I won't explain it now just because I have to get going. I hear Brooklyn's alarm. Was that yours? Okay. The last thing is economic development. This is the key part. For too long, for decades, many decades, we are constantly in this fight, in this circular effect of we don't have enough money to fund programs for our families and our youth. We don't have enough money to get more officers and firefighters. The trend is just we don't have money, And we go after property owners. How many of you are property owners in here? Are you tired of being taxed? Yes. How many of you are renters? I'm a renter. And I tell you that because of the property tax, it blocks me, it's a barrier to entry to be a homeowner. We all know that this is how you generate intergenerational wealth, and that is important if that is an interest for you. And so in order to decrease these barriers, it is the responsibility of the city to figure out stronger new streams of revenue. And this is what we're doing under this administration, so that we can stop the cycle of continuously going after our property owners who live in the city to give us more money, when it is really our job to figure out new streams of monies. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Mayor. All right, so we are going to move on to a presentation by our Department of Violence Prevention Chief, but before we do that, I would like to introduce some very special guests that we have just here today at tonight's town hall. We have members of our Oakland Public Safety Youth Leadership Council sitting right here in the front row. These young people have stepped up to provide young youth voices to help inform public safety decisions for the city. And I would like to bring up Christina, one of the members. Christina. Christina Christina represented the Youth Leadership Council when it was time to interview and do the search process for our Department of Violence Prevention Chief, Dr. Holly Joshi. She sat on the panel and was a part of that process, and so we're going to allow her to introduce the chief that she chose on behalf of the young people. So give it up for Christina one more time.
Hi guys, I'm Christina, and the Chief of the Department of Violence Prevention, Dr. Holly Joshi, has vast leadership experience and a track record of successfully implementing evidence-based violence prevention and intervention strategies. Prior to taking on leadership of the Department of Violence Prevention in December, she led nonprofit organizations focused on improving community health and safety and spent 14 years at the Oakland Police Department. While there, she held various roles, including the head of the Vice and Child Exploitation Unit and Chief of Staff. She was a member of the executive team that successfully implemented the ceasefire strategy in partnership with community leaders over 10 years ago. She is an Oakland native, widely recognized for her expertise and intersections of gender-based violence and gun violence, and her deep collaborative relationship across the city. Well, that's Miss Holly Joshi for you.
Thank you, Christina. Such an honor to be here with you all tonight in East Oakland. She said an Oakland native, but she forgot to say an East Oakland native. So, I'm Holly Joshi, and I agreed to come back to the city after being gone for 9 years working in nonprofits in December, specifically because this administration told me that they had a commitment to implementing a holistic approach to public safety, with an emphasis on reinvestments in the ceasefire strategy and focused deterrence. So as the mayor says, focused deterrence actually is the most studied and researched approach to gun violence in the country. So this isn't just something that Oakland is doing and that worked in Oakland, but it's something that has worked across the country and is data-driven and the most researched approach to gun violence reduction in the country. The Department of Violence Prevention represents the city's investment in that holistic approach to community safety. We're only 5 years old, so for those of you that remember, the Department of Violence Prevention was actually the brainchild of former council member Lynette McElhaney and community members who understood that in order to get ahead of violence, to prevent violence, to intervene in violence, we had to have a complementary department to the police department. So we're still a baby in terms of the big scheme of things in the city. We're 5 years old, and our approach to violence prevention is called community violence intervention. It's a field. It's a growing field that has national recognition. I just came back from the White House a couple of months ago. Vice President Harris has created the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and the specific focus is flooding communities like Oakland with over $200 million of investment to do community violence intervention work better. So the models that we are implementing inside of Oakland's Department of Violence Prevention are the models that are popping up in cities and counties across the country. While I was there were 50 other directors of offices of violence prevention. So ours is the only one called the Department of Violence Prevention, but they're all called OVPs, or Offices of Violence Prevention, and there's over 50 of us across the country. So again, the strategies that we are implementing here and have been for the past 5 years are growing strategic investments coming from Washington. The 3 goals of the Department of Violence Prevention are reducing homicides and shootings, reducing gender-based violence and commercial sexual exploitation, and reducing levels of trauma associated with violence. It's those 3 specific goals. The Department of Violence Prevention is very small. It's only 55 positions inside of the department. And so those 55 folks that work for me, directly for me, represent the deployable team that I'm able to send out into the city as violence interrupters and life coaches to intervene in violence based on their relationships in community. So the folks that I hire are credible messengers. They are from Oakland, they have deep roots, they have community connections, and they're formerly incarcerated or formerly gang and group involved themselves. And so they represent for our clients who are at the center of violence, the living, breathing, walking proof that there really is light on the other side of getting out of cycles of violence. So we're implementing focused deterrence strategies that are evidence-based, that are data-driven. We collaborate very deeply with probation, the police department, the district attorney's office, faith-based leaders, and community leaders to implement the strategy that focuses on the 350 people in the city at any given time that are driving violence. Those folks are identified through both community intelligence and police intelligence, and then we at the Department of Violence Prevention relentlessly pursue those individuals to give them a pathway out of violence. So of course that doesn't mean that there's no enforcement activities. Chief Mitchell will talk more about that part of the strategy. But the way that I like to think about it is that the police department creates two lists of people that are at the center of violence. List A are the people that they feel that they have probable cause to go after. We don't ever see that list. The police department does their thing. But list B is the important list, which I call the golden list. That list comes to us, and we relentlessly pursue those people before they end up dead, before they pick up a gun, and before they go to prison. And the significance of that can't be understated, because as Christina said when she was introducing me, I spent 14 years at the Oakland Police Department. So I was there before ceasefire was implemented, I was there after ceasefire was implemented. And so for those of us that care about community safety and reducing the footprint of the criminal justice system, this is the strategy that does both of those things. Before ceasefire, the B list of people that the police department did not have probable cause on yet, those folks would linger on a list. And the police department was the only people that had the information that these folks were at risk of violence. And so sometimes what would happen when I walked into the lineup room of the people that were on the B list, not yet arrestable but engaged in violence, is there would be red marks and X's crossed out on their faces because they'd already been killed. So the significance of ceasefire is that every Friday we go into a meeting in the mayor's office, all of the partners, and we get list B. So the police department gives us list B, and we get to relentlessly pursue those individuals to give them an opportunity to get on our life coaching, to get in our intensive case management model, and to choose another life. And that intensive case management model involves daily contact and multiple in-person visits with their life coach. Our life coaches, again, are credible messengers who come through violence themselves and work very, very relentlessly with clients to make better choices. Sometimes those choices involve relocating out of Oakland, getting re-enrolled in school. We know that education is extremely important, getting jobs, getting housing, etc. So I know that my timer went off, so I'm going to stop there and just say that we believe at the DDP that when given the right opportunities in intensive case management, that people caught in cycles of violence want to get off the hamster wheel of violence, and we've seen it working. And I'm not going to say these statistics to try and prove anything or convince you all of anything, but I am going to say that since re-implementation of the ceasefire strategy, homicides are down 15%, shootings are down 30%, and that is not to say that we believe that we're doing a great job. It's to say that we believe the strategy still works in this city. And the reason that we're monitoring that weekly is because if the ceasefire strategy doesn't work in Oakland anymore, then there would be no reason for us to continue to invest in it. And so we're monitoring it weekly to be sure that the strategy that worked from 2012 to 2019 still works. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. Give it for our chief. All right. So we're going to do one more presentation before we take the first round of questions. And before we do that, I'm going to introduce Mr. DJ here from the Oakland Public Safety Youth Leadership Council. Shout out to DJ. Recent graduate of OUSD. And DJ helped participate on the panel, on the hiring panel for our Oakland Police Chief search process. And so I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce our Police Chief, Floyd Mitchell.
Good afternoon. My name is DJ, a youth council member for the Oakland Public Safety Youth Leadership Council. Chief Floyd Mitchell began his career as a patrol officer with Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. After 25 years of impeccable service with Kansas City, he accepted the police chief position for the city of Temple, Texas. In In 2019, Chief Mitchell was appointed as the 23rd Police Chief for Ludwig, Texas, where he served until September of 2023. Chief Mitchell is a veteran of the United States Air Force. Chief Mitchell has earned both his BSA and MBA degrees in Business Administration from Baker University and is a graduate of the Certified Public Manager Program administered by Texas State University. He is a graduate of the 236th Federal Bureau of Investigations National Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and the Police Executive Research Forum, Senior Management Institute for Policing at Boston College. Give it up for Chief Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. You're going to try to follow me with my slides. I'm going to kind of go off slide a little bit, so Brooklyn, just bear with me a little bit. And I understand that I'm going to try to stay within my 5 minutes, but it may be a little tough. You know, as your police chief, my main concern is your safety and the safety of everyone in the city of Oakland. On my way here, I stopped by the 62nd homicide scene that we've experienced in the city of Oakland this year. A man was gunned down in our street in broad daylight just a couple hours ago. We have to, as a community, make it clear that this is not what we want as we move forward. We have to make it clear this is not the society that we want to live in. There's no reason in the world why someone should get down by two men with assault rifles in broad daylight in our city. We have to demand more. As your police chief, one of the first things I did, I sat down with Mayor Tao to talk about public safety. Not only a public safety, but summer safety plan, because I got here just as school was getting ready to get out for the summer. So we put together a public safety plan, our summer safety plan, to go along with our public safety plan that is piggybacking on ceasefire. That summer safety plan takes into consideration our crime gun intelligence center, our criminal investigations division, and our traffic unit, as well as our patrol officers. One of the things we wanted to make sure is we had high visibility during the summer because we knew all of our kids were going to be out enjoying the city and the streets of Oakland and everything it has to offer. I am new to Oakland. This is a beautiful city and it has so much to offer. But we have a reputation of being a violent city. And that is incumbent upon each and every one of us to take that seriously and work together to make sure we're doing everything we can to make it safer. That's my charge, and that's my charge to the officers, the men and women of the Oakland Police Department. One of the things we did is work with our federal partners to make sure that they knew that we wanted their help. We encouraged the California Highway Patrol to come in and help us. We worked with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office to come in and help us. And we are in partnership with the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, and the Marshal Service to help us identify and track down those individuals that are working in Oakland to create harm to our community. And we continue to do so. Our high visibility efforts include our foot patrol, our overtime assignments to create high visibility in those high crime areas, our crime reduction team, and our special response group teams that are out there working overtime hours to put in the work to identify those folks and put them in jail. One of the other deals that we've done quite a bit on as we collaborate with our other law enforcement partners is we have done several each weekend or each week, because it's not just on the weekends. We do 2 vice decoys down on International Boulevard to try to identify those folks that are patronizing prostitution and those that are promoting prostitution. Identifying those folks, offering them help when they need help, when they want help, identifying the victims of prostitution, but also holding accountable those individuals that are promoting prostitution, the pimps out there. Partnershiping with other community departments, we continue at the Oakland Police Department to partnership with DVP, OPDOT in regards to the ramping up of the sideshow activities that we see out there. That's another detail that we do on overtime every weekend throughout Oakland. We have our intelligence investigators that are monitoring the social media platforms that indicate where these folks are going to hold these sideshows. And we have a detail that works every Friday and Saturday night to try to stop and prevent these sideshows. And they do a good job, but we can't catch them all. But we work hard to do that. We also coordinate with Macro, and I know Chief is going to talk about that in our homeless outreach team. One of the big things that we do is our detectives and our officers work hard to put together good cases to present to not only our county DA, but our federal partners and our state partners as it comes to prosecution. And I know that's something that's come up quite a bit here in the first 3 months that I've been here. We are going to offer opportunities for those who want to change their lives and not be involved in criminal activity. But we also want to make sure that those that want to continue to operate in criminal activity are held accountable for their actions. And that's why we're going to continue to work with our county prosecutor and our state and federal prosecutors as we move forward. Just 2 more bullet points. Just talk about our technology. As the mayor talked about, we have 290 cameras that are currently being installed across the city of Oakland right now. I was briefed today, and we have at least 100 of those cameras up. They're not fully operational yet, but we do have 100 of those up. That 290 is only a portion of the 400 cameras that are going to be positioned throughout the East Bay area by the state that we will have access to. So we're continuing to move down that path. We also have a lot of drones. We have 19 drone operators on our police department, and we have officers that are deployed with those drones. And one of the things that we're looking at right now with some of our private business partners is deploying drones as the first responders. These are drones that are going to be placed on certain areas throughout the city that will get up when we have calls for service and get over that activity as fast as possible, most times before an officer can respond there. So we're working to do that as well. Again, we're going to continue to partner with our business improvement districts, our faith-based community partners as well, as we all work together to try to combat crime within the city of Oakland. But just as I started, we have to work together to make Oakland a safer place. And I believe we can do it.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Mitchell. Okay, so at this time, we're going to start taking some questions that are specific to safety. This town hall is about a clean and safe city, so we're starting with safety, and then we'll get into the clean. So the first question that I want to put out there is something that Chief Joshi addressed. I believe the mayor addressed it, also Chief Mitchell addressed it, and it's about our crime data, right? What the data says about crime going down versus the experience of folks in the city. And the difference between feeling safe and data showing that crime is in fact down. So the question is, why when there is still crime, when people are still, experiencing crime, are we talking about crime going down?
It's to report crime data to our public is a metric that we use so you can see what is happening and what your police department is doing. There's crime data that we can communicate to you in regards to, yes, we have seen a 15% decrease in our violent crime. Those are murders, rapes, robberies, and aggravated assaults. We have seen almost a 30% decrease in our property crimes. And I will be the first one to admit that when you talk about our property crimes, there is a delay because we have an online reporting system, and those reports that you report online about your car being broken into or damage to your car or something being stolen, an officer has to verify that data before it's put into our system. So there is a delay. But what I will tell you though is that the data that is out there in regards to our violent crime, that 15% being down, those numbers are correct and they are validated. So I feel very comfortable in sharing that information with you. What I understand though is when you are a victim, it doesn't matter what the crime data says because you're being victimized, and I understand that. I have been a victim of a property crime, so I understand exactly how you feel. But understand that the data is correct when we say that the crime is going down. This is a major metropolitan city of almost 500,000 people. There's a lot going on in this city. And I would love for it to be zero crime across the board, but I don't think we will ever be there. But we're going to do everything we can to, one, report to you what the crime data is. If it's trending up, I'm going to tell you it's trending up. If it's trending down, I'm going to tell you it's trending down and where we're seeing the decreases. And when I talk to you about crime, I'm going to give you the best data that I possibly can at the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Mitchell. I'm just going to add a little color to this just because I've been in Oakland my entire life and my 23-year career was spent here. And so this conversation about weekly crime data is not new to this administration. I was at the police department when the requests became regular for weekly crime data. It was coming from community and it was coming from council. And so the weekly crime reports that the police department and the city are producing and we're discussing have been going on for almost a decade. So I just want to point out this conversation about crime, whether it's up or down or whether it's flat and what's going on with the crime trends, has been a weekly conversation in this city for some time. And we hold ourselves accountable to those numbers. So for me to talk about whether crime is up or down as a new director of a department coming back to the city after being gone for 9 years, it's a way to hold myself and my team accountable to whether or not what we're implementing is working. So that's what's important to me. I think it's twofold. How am I measuring performance of my team, being held accountable specifically to crime numbers, and how are we communicating transparently in alignment with what the community began asking for over a decade ago?
Thank you, Chief. Okay, so next question. We had a number of questions, at least 4, about 911. Folks looking for some updates around the 911 operations, the increased staffing. When can, we expect some improvements and at what rate? I'm not sure who wants to start with that one. Maybe we'll start with Chief and then make sure you're...
Sure. The 911 emergency dispatch system falls under the police department. We currently have about 20 folks that are in our training cycle right now. I believe that the total staffing for our communications is around 76, so we have about 20 in the cycle right now. Right now, we're hovering somewhere between 4 and 6 vacancies. We had a few people leave here recently, so I'm sorry, between 6 and 10 vacancies. We had a few people leave. They didn't pass certain benchmarks in regards to the training, so we had to let them go. But that position is always open. We're always looking for people who are looking to, want to join our police department and be communications dispatchers. But we have seen an increase. The data that I saw when I first got here is we were in the low around 43 to 47%, and right now we're hovering somewhere around 52 to 54% of answering 911 calls in that 0 to 15-second call range. Yes, there's a lot of work to be done. And when you call 911, we know that you need, there's an emergency and you need immediate response. And we're doing our best to work in that space to get those dispatchers trained and on the console and out there to answer your calls as quick as possible.
And just to quickly add to that, the 911 dispatch issue has been an issue for many years. This is something we inherited. When we came in, the call log between, picking up the phone, a dispatcher picking up the phone between 0 seconds to 15 seconds, which is the ideal amount of time, we were actually at 35%, right? That's a very low number. When people call 911, it is probably their worst day, and they expect and demand, as they should, for someone to pick up, right? And I've tried calling 911 when I was a council member. I got the busy signal. That is not ever okay. And so with that being said, we are now, when we came in, we put $2.5 million into updating the infrastructure, right? The infrastructure on the back end, which I can tell you a lot of elected officials don't want to fund that because you all as voters can't see and touch and feel that, right? And so that has been long depleted, where people were not funding the infrastructure piece. The council members that are currently on the council funded for $2.5 million. Now we have an update, and instead of 35% being picked up between 0 and 15 seconds, now it's 53%. Just as context, in San Francisco, they are a city and a county. They have double the amount of money that we do, double amount of the people that live there, and our calls for service is what? Over $1 million a year. In San Francisco, it's half of that, and they have a larger police force, right? And so again, going to the economic development piece, in order for us to actually have the funds to have basic things like dispatchers, to pick up more officers. We have to get creative about how we bring business to the city. And so that is a priority of mine that we are working on.
Just to clarify, our 911, our calls into the 911 dispatch are over 1 million.
All right, thank you so much. So, Mayor, we're just talking about the size of our police force, so let's just get into that. There's a question about what's the plan to increase the police force, and anything that's being significantly done to do that.
Right now, we are standing at 691 officers on our police department. We're currently budgeted for 678. The new budget that was approved by council has us attritioning down to 678. And we all know that we're having some funding issues, and that's why that is where it's at right now. But we're above that number right now. We do have an academy in the class, our academy that's in session right now to replace officers as they attrition out. And this council has also approved and funded 2 additional classes, the 195th and 196th. So while we do attrition about 4 to 6 officers out a month, whether it be through retirements or people finding other lines of work or leaving the department because of disciplinary issues, we do have classes that are in session now to try to replace those officers as they attrition out. So that's the plan right now.
You want to add anything?
I just want to give folks a heads up. On your ballot measure this November, there is going to be a renewal of what was then what we call Measure Z, that is the public safety renewal. And so you'll vote yes or no to continue this Measure Z, which is the updated version of it. And this gives a minimum threshold for the city to actually fund 700 officers. So if this measure passed, then it would be bestowed upon the city and directed by the voters, which is the strongest directive, to mandate that our city have a minimum of 700 officers at any given time.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, we're going to do 2 more initial questions about safety, and then we'll get into the presentation about cleanliness, clean city, take some questions about that, and then if we have time, we'll come back and answer. Some of you have very specific questions that don't fall into clean or safety necessarily, but we're going to try to get to those as well. So 2 more. This next one, I'm going to direct to you, Chief Joshi, although I know that the police department does some of this. So this is about victims of crime. It's talking about folks who've gone through crime. What is Oakland, the City of Oakland doing to help support those that have suffered from trauma?
Yes, so in addition to having the 55 deployable team members that I talked about earlier, the Department of Violence Prevention also gives between $15 and $20 million out per year. That's your Measure Z dollars at work to 30 community-based organizations. So some of those community-based organizations I'm sure you all heard of: Bay Area Women Against Rape, Family Violence Law Center, Youth Alive, BOSS, on and on. And they do a lot of deep work with survivors of violence, both in terms of gender-based violence and gun violence. Youth Alive, as we all know, is one of the elite and leading agencies to enact hospital-based intervention. So anytime someone gets shot and arrives at Highland Hospital at ACH, Youth Alive deploys a hospital-based interventionist to the scene to begin supporting the survivor, support the survivor with doing their victim of crimes paperwork in order to get supports. A lot of times folks are looking to get relocated out of Oakland for their safety or to move their families, etc. So our community-based organizations do a lot of work with victims and survivors of crime. Inside the Department of Violence Prevention, I would also argue that we're working a lot with victims of crime. Because when we're working with gangs and groups involved young people, today's victim is tomorrow's perpetrator of gun violence and vice versa, right? So we don't really see too much of a line with our clients. Many of our clients have been shot and victimized. Many of our clients are survivors of violence, and some of our clients have perpetrated violence. So we're working very deeply with them as well. We have healing services, many healing supports, therapeutic supports of all types, culturally appropriate therapeutic supports, etc. So we're working directly with survivors inside the Department of Violence Prevention and funding community-based organizations that do the work as well.
Thank you. Okay, last question before we move to clean is specifically about where we are. Folks are expressing a desire for the Fruitvale to get some attention. They're saying that Fruitvale district needs some attention. So this is actually open to whoever wants to answer. Maybe we could get a couple of different folks. Is what's being done to support Fruitvale specifically around safety, the transit village and other areas?
So I'll start and the chief can end it. So in regards to the Fruitvale Village, we know that there has been, people, let's just be clear, people are driving like they've lost their minds, right? And so what we've done is I've walked out there with the area captain. I don't know if it's still the same area captain, but then interim chief Allison. And we met with all the business owners, and then we met with community. And so what we've done is, I know that on Fruitvale, all the codes and what have you went up, and so I'll let DOT speak to that. But we are working closely with the Sheriff's Department to ensure that we get that overlay of partnership. That is a throwaway where it's jurisdiction for the sheriff because the AC Transit runs through there. And so we're asking for the sheriff to come out more often. Not just that, we brought back, under my administration, we brought back the motorcycle cops. And so the motorcycle cops are out there. Again, they're not out there at every single moment. We just don't have enough officers for that. But they are out there pulling people over, writing tickets. From the Department of Transportation standpoint, again, we are a city that has been chosen to actually put in automated speed readers. And so that is what I talked about earlier about receiving a ticket in the mail. And that is part of, the Fruitvale corridor is a part of that pilot program as well. But I know that in regards to OPD, which I'll let the chief speak on it, we've actually done a lot of work in regards to being very strategic where we place. What is that big truck called? I'll let you talk about it.
Our community engagement vehicle, mobile community engagement vehicle. But just piggyback on what the mayor said, we have our crime reduction team, we have our special resource section officers that are out here, we have our foot patrol officers, as well as our trust building officers. And that's not to mention or forget the patrol officers that are assigned to each of the areas out here. Each of the areas there's 36 areas within the entire city of Oakland, and there is an officer assigned to each of those areas almost every night. We get a report out each morning at 8 o'clock. If there is a beat that's uncovered, why that beat was uncovered, did we move resources to cover that beat? And I think this morning we had 2 beats that were uncovered for the entire city for the afternoon shift for a certain reason. I think because they had 2 people call in sick. So the sergeants and the area captains are making decisions in real time to try to identify where we need to move resources based on what's going on. So I don't think that the Fruitvale area in and of itself is being neglected. We are dedicating resources to this area to make sure that the resources that we have to make sure that the entire city is covered.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I would add is from the mayor's office perspective, we have a staff by the name of Myra Chavez. Shout out to Myra. I don't know if she's in here. Some of you know her. She's Oakland native, Fruitvale native. And she meets regularly with the neighborhood council in that area and helps to work with the business owners and the residents and is a liaison for our office, specifically for Fruitvale. So you definitely have a champion in our office in Myra. Okay, so we're going to move forward. We're doing pretty good on time. We're going to move into our Clean City segment of this evening's agenda. And again, we'll come back. There are some good questions that I want to make sure we can try to come back to that are related to different topics, young people, etc. So we're going to move forward and talk about fire department and then get into our cleanliness. So I have the honor of introducing our chief of the fire department, Mr. Damon Covington. Chief Cov, that's what we call him. Chief Cov has been our chief since October of 2023. Prior to this appointment, Chief Covington served in an array of capacities over his 24-year career with Oakland Fire. This is my favorite part, including firefighter paramedic, fire engineer, lieutenant of fire, captain of training, battalion chief, special ops chief, deputy fire chief, and most recently, interim fire chief. Chief Covington's educational accomplishments include a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from Sonoma State University and a master's degree in executive public administration from Golden Gate University. Chief Covington was the president of the Oakland Black Firefighters Association from 2016 to 2022, and previously served as the chair of the Rodeo Hercules Fire Protection District, respectively. Additionally, he currently serves as an adjunct professor for Merritt College, where he lectures in the undergraduate fire science program. Please give it up for our Oakland native fire chief, Jamie Covington.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Before I start, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the Oakland Fire Department, I just cannot stop looking around this gym. It is amazing. I spent so many hours and played so many games in this gym, and it never looked like this, ever. So congratulations to Fremont. I'm proud that we are reinvesting in our most important citizens, which is our youth, and giving them an opportunity to come to a great school, great facility that's been upgraded, and really pour themselves into their education, because it will pay off. A little bit about the Oakland Fire Department. We could go on and on about the Oakland Fire Department. You have an extremely proud fire department who serves every corner of this city. We have 25 stations. We have over 550 members of the Oakland Fire Department, proud members. But what's most important that I want to make sure we understand is that we have multiple divisions of the fire department. You guys mostly see the operations division, the engines and the trucks that you see on the street. When you call 911, operations division shows up, right? And we show up 85,000 times a year throughout the city of Oakland. We're a 24/7, 365-day operation. Our Oakland Fire Department has been around since 1869, so we've been doing this for a while. Every year, our call volume increases, right? And as our call volume increases, it increases the demand on our workforce. So we've really invested a lot in the mental health aspect of our workforce, because we know, just like in general society, people are feeling the pressures of life, and we want to make sure that our firefighters are taken care of. We also want to make sure that our Oakland residents understand there's an opportunity for our citizens of Oakland to become part of the Oakland Fire Department. Some of you youngsters that I see in here, we'd love to see you guys kicking in doors and putting out fires, but we also have opportunities for everyone in our city, whether it's in our dispatch, as we spoke about earlier, our dispatch center who takes the incoming 911 calls, or it's our fire prevention bureau who does all of our vegetation management inspections throughout the city, or if it's our macro division, and I brought my esteemed colleague, Elliot Jones, who's our macro director, and we'll talk a little bit about macro in a minute. Our EMS division, who handles all of our medical supplies, or our EMSD division, who handles the overall emergency management for the entire city, who prepares us for earthquakes or tsunamis or wildland fires. How are we going to get out of our areas into safety? EMSD handles all of that. So I say that to say there are multiple layers to the fire department. And what I want as the fire chief, I love to hire Oakland residents, because no one understands Oakland quite like people who have lived in Oakland, right? Yeah. Oakland has its own tempo. Oakland has its own way. And we want people who understand that tempo and understand that way. Not that we don't want to hire people from other places, they'll get it eventually. But if I can bring you in and you understand, that'll put us further down the road. So there's a lot of opportunity in the Oakland Fire Department. Some of the key initiatives that we have going right now: wildland-urban interface, right? In our hills throughout the city of Oakland, and even in our flatlands. Wildland fires are a threat. They're a threat for every community in our country and around the world. We're working tirelessly to make sure that we are fire safe as a city. So that means cutting back the canopies. Has anyone seen the goats around the city? The goats are our friends. The goats do the work that we can't do because they get into the terrain, the tough areas to get to in the city, and make sure that we're clearing those areas out. We're partnering with a lot of different corporations to make sure that we can get all those dead and dying eucalyptus trees, all those lots that haven't been cleared in years. We're making sure that we're getting out and we're doing our part, because we've asked you to do your part, create that 100-foot defensible space around your home. 95% of you guys have done that every year for the last 3 years, and we applaud you for that. Thank you. This is truly, being a fire-safe city truly is a partnership. We're asking you to do your part, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable to make sure we do our part. One of the most recent wings of the fire department that we started is macro. Does anybody know what macro is? Yeah? All three of you guys, okay. Macro is the Mobile Assistance Community Responders of Oakland. And I'm gonna turn the mic to Elliot Jones in a minute to talk a little bit about it. But I wanna tell you from the fire chief perspective, my viewpoint on macro. Macro is just over 2 years old, right? We've started macro as a initiative from our council and from our community, because we wanted to make sure that we're handling these mental health calls, these low acuity calls, and these non-violent calls without having to call OPD or OFD to respond. These are not medical emergencies, they're certainly not crimes, so we need the right people to show up and offer assistance for people who are having a moment. And so we've grown quite a bit in the last 2 years. Macro has run over 35,000 calls. That's 35,000 calls that didn't get to OPD that they needed to respond to. When OPD's taking over 1 million calls to the call center a year, we want to take as many of those calls away as we can. Again, we're taxing our workforce by making them respond to calls that they really can't help on. So that's where macro comes in. We've grown our macro staff by another 18 members this year. We're over 30 members for the entire staff, and we're growing. We want to make sure that we are meeting the need of the City of Oakland. Again, we're asking for collaboration. We want to hear from you about how macro's doing. We know the stats, we know what macro's doing from a statistical standpoint, but are we meeting the needs of the community? And we need you guys to weigh in on that and tell us, this is what I've dealt with when I dealt with macro. Here's what I think macro should be doing and how come they're not. We want to have that dialogue with you to make sure that as we grow macro, because macro will be here for a long time, that we're growing it in a way that meets the scratches Oakland's itch, if you understand what I mean. We want to make sure that we're growing it in a way that we can be proud of, and it really is at the forefront of the fire department's delivery. So I welcome your questions. I'm sure there'll be some macro questions, and Mr. Jones will be happy to answer those as well. But if you guys have any fire department questions that you want answered, please, we're more than open to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
That's okay. And then we do have one, Elliot, for macro for you, sir. First, I'm getting requests to make sure we shout you out for being a 2022, 2023, 2024 Melrose champion of the Neighborhood Council. Shout out to the Melrose Neighborhood Council. I'll get to that second question when we get to the other questions. But I have one about reporting fire bugs. I'm assuming that might be people who like to start fires. How do we report fire bugs if we have photos?
If you have photos, 911, anytime you have a fire, anything, 911 is your first thing to do to ring the alarm for us, and we'll respond. If you have photos, you can send those photos directly to fire prevention, or you can send them to the fire chief, and I'll route them to wherever they need to go. We have had a couple of fire bugs. People, again, mental health is an issue, but we want to make sure that we're not allowing people to make our city fire unsafe in any way. So if you have information, send it to me, and I'll route it to wherever it needs to go. But we want to make sure that we're being as fire safe as we can.
And you are D. Covington? What are you?
DL, David Larry Covington, COV as in Victor, INGTON, at oaklandca.gov.
All right, thank you so much. And then as far as macro, I'll go ahead and hand this one to you, Elliot. So this person is saying they would like to see macro be more active in their community. I'm not sure what that's asking for, because I know you respond to mental health crisis and homelessness, but with some homeless events, but maybe you could talk about what the coverage looks like now and any plans for spreading it.
No, happy. Good evening, Fremont High. How's everybody? So the fastest way to get a macro response, there are 3 ways to reach us. The best way is to dial the macro direct dispatch number. And that number is 510-446-2276. 510-446-2276. And if you're having trouble remembering that, it's 510-44-macro. Fall hard for that one, guys, trust me. The second way, that will actually take you to a dispatcher in the Oakland Fire Dispatch Center, and they will triage the call to make sure that it's a low acuity quality of life. There's no weapons, there's no active threat of violence, the person is not a danger to themselves or others, and they will send it directly to a macro team to respond. The second way to reach us is emailing, macro@oaklandca.gov. If it is truly a nonviolent incident, if it's truly not an emergent, urgent issue, you should have time to sit down and write an email. And this is extremely helpful for ongoing challenges. And I get emails from all over the city. There are a lot of ongoing challenges. But the best way for us to get in the game and to start addressing them is for you to contact Macro. We will send it to one of our teams, and they will start the process of responding, assessing your incident and issue, and doing our best to come to a resolution that not only satisfies the reporting party, but also those that are in need. We don't force anybody anything in Macro, so we really have to build trust, and it sometimes takes multiple visits for a result to pan out. The final way, and I know Chief Mitchell and the 911 Center don't want this, but if you happen to call 911 and you say the right things, this is a non-emergent and non-violent call, they will direct it to the Fire Center for a response. One of the best partnerships we've had is with the OPD 911 call center, and we regularly meet to continue to promote efficiencies and improve the number of calls that we get. Macro is in service 7 days a week, serving the entire city of Oakland, and with the addition of our 18 new staffers that hit the streets in June 2024, we are now in coverage for 16 hours a day, 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m., and this is a major milestone. And I'll end with this. In the last 3 months since these people have been in the field, we have responded to, up to date, 957 calls for service. And that is remarkable. If we look at 2024, the number of dispatch response from our macro teams is 46% of our whole total dispatches in the lifetime of the program. But that takes time. That takes building things methodically, training up new folks, and giving them a chance to hit the street and serve. And we proudly do that for the entire city of Oakland, 7 days a week.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so we're going to move into presentations around a clean city, and I'm going to start by introducing our city administrator, Mr. Justin D. Johnson. Justin Johnson came to Oakland in May 2023 after an exhaustive nationwide search for our next city administrator. He has worked in municipal and county governments for nearly 2 decades, including serving as the Deputy Chief Operating Officer in Atlanta, where he worked closely with public safety agencies and led development of significant capital projects. He also previously served as the Assistant County Manager for the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, as City Manager of Bisbee, Arizona, and as Management Assistant to the City Manager for the City of Tucson, Arizona. Before this role, he served as IBM's Corporate Social Responsibility Manager. Please give a warm welcome to our new City Administrator, Justin D. Johnson.
Thank you. So certainly I want to make sure that I have the opportunity to allow my team to get into the clean aspects of tonight's presentation, but one of the key roles that I had was serving at the pleasure of the mayor and also working with our council members. Certainly want to acknowledge your Councilman Gallo is here as well. Certainly appreciate also the opportunity to, if I may, sort of set the pieces on the chessboard, specifically identifying and allocating the right resources, specifically people, to help deliver on our local government services and also support our women and men who support you all every single day. 2 of those leaders here to my left Harold Duffy is our Assistant City Administrator who oversees our homelessness division as well as our public infrastructure portfolio. There was a realignment to make sure that the responsibilities, and as many of you all see with respect to our homeless encampments, it's not just the encampment, it's everything else around it, to include trash, the blight, etc. So that's one major rationale as it relates to why I made the decision to reshuffle the portfolio, which is consistent with what most local government leaders will do in any organization just about. But also to the left of ACA Duffy, we also have Josh Rowan, who is our Director of Transportation, who will share a bit about his background and what he seeks to accomplish and what he has already accomplished since we've been here. One of the key areas I know that you all are very much interested in is that on what are we doing to clean the city. And I also want to acknowledge that there's a significant, two key areas that we have not done a very good job. One is communicating what call of action, as well as a call of action. I know many of you all collectively volunteer in your own respective communities, and I want to personally say thank you. And one of the things that you will not hear from me is to say what we don't have as a city. It is what are we doing with the resources that we have. And the only way we are able to collectively dig ourselves out of many of the holes that we see is by partnership. Such partnership, we work very closely with the Beautification Council, we work closely with many of our council members who have their own respective initiatives. So those sorts of things. So y'all didn't come here to hear me talk. I want to make sure to give my leaders the appropriate space so that they can communicate effectively with respect to, so they can communicate some of the aspects of their role and responsibility with respect to clean. But also I'm asking Assistant City Administrator Duffy if you can just kind of talk about how the Department of Public Works is working harder to rebuild the enforcement arm of public works so that we can address some of the illegal dumping that we see in and throughout our community. And there will be a call of action there. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I want to say I'm so happy to be here tonight with you guys. It starts with a partnership with you and the City of Oakland. I appreciate that. I have 5 things I'm going to talk about tonight. One is illegal dumping. The other one's going to be homeless encampments. The other one's was where I do my business lines. The next one's Adopt the Spot and Oakland Fresh. So for example, we have about 60 individuals who regularly collect illegal dumping throughout the City of Oakland. 20,000 tons of materials were collected last year. That's about 35 pounds for each resident of Oakland that we're carrying around mental illnesses on the street. We also responded to about 30,000 calls for services. So let me ask you this question. How many residents in here actually have trash service? How many residents in here actually have trash service at their residence? That should be everybody, right? So where's all this trash coming from? So the real question is this. If I did the same thing with businesses, only 85% to 90% of the business would have their hands up. There are 10% of the businesses that do not have trash service. And they are in business and they are generating trash, and that trash is going somewhere, and you're seeing that on your streets. So what can you do about that? So if you're in an apartment complex or you're moving out of an apartment, when someone says, hey, I'll haul it away for you, be careful. If they're charging you $50, they're taking that stuff and they're throwing it on the street, and then you're going to be held responsible when our environmental enforcement officers go through and find that information. So be careful. If you hire somebody to clean your yard out or do work for you, ask them to do this. When you bring the dump slips back to me, I will pay you. Do not hire somebody for a good deal and let them trash your City of Oakland. Don't allow them to do that. So, Mr. Johnson also mentioned, thank you. Mr. Johnson also mentioned this. So, as a business, when we see things aren't working, we need to make changes. So we are moving our environmental enforcement officers to another division to focus in on those businesses that do not have trash service. Every business in the city of Oakland that is occupied is required to have trash service, and that's not happening. The other thing I do is, part of my business line is I'm responsible to ensure that everything that we build, from vertical to horizontal in the city of Oakland, that's owned by the city, I was put here to make sure that we get that out as quickly as possible. So you measure KK bonds, you measure U bonds, over $1 billion in revenue for structures, for roadways. We're going to watch us put that out. We're going to move very quickly on that. The next thing is, what else can you do? There's something called an adopt-a spot, okay? I told you earlier, we had 60 people in the City of Oakland Public Works Department that pick up illegal dumping throughout the city. But you can help us with the adopt-a-spot program. The adopt-a-spot program is over there, raise your hand. So if you know an area in the city that you want to come in your neighborhood, get somewhere around the city that you want to help clean up, call the adopt-a-spot. They'll give you the material. They'll come out and help you set up something. But the goal here is that you partner with us to take care of this. I want you to be a resident against trash in Oakland neighborhoods. I want you to take that goal and make sure that you take on the responsibility along with the city to make sure that our neighborhoods are not trashed. We're also starting a new program called Oakland Fresh. What Oakland Fresh is going to be, it's a little bit different, is that we're selecting the areas of the city and we're going in and we're not just trimming the tree or getting rid of the graffiti or repaving the road. We're going to be doing all at one time. So when we leave there, you will know that we were there and we will make a difference. And when we do that, we also are going to partner with the community to make sure that they help us keep it clean. And so I thank you so much for being here, because it starts with your participation. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Josh Rowan. I'm the director of the Oakland Department of Transportation. I made a slight mistake last night. I was given 3 minutes, and I thought they said 30. So I'm going to try to atone for that tonight. Real quickly, talking about transportation in Oakland.
We're answering questions. We're answering questions right now. Can somebody make sure that these folks are able to write down questions that they have, because we want to make sure we get to as many as possible. Thank you, sir. Okay, so he has an encampment question, and there's other people who've asked that too.
And then you go by the Eastmont Mall, when the police station is at, and you got a big hole. How many people go by that big hole, pothole by 73rd?
Yeah. How many of you guys want the questions answered, right? You want some answers to your questions. So let's get to that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
I'm gonna leave it at that, but this sounds like a campaign.
Okay, we're trying to get to as many questions as possible and trying to share some information. Thank you for being here. Director Rowland, you have 3 minutes.
All right, great. Does the clock reset? Do I get the full 3? So real quickly, my name is Josh Rowan. I'm an engineer. Happy to be here with the Oakland Department of Transportation. Going to talk about two sides of the department. The first is a pretty typical DOT, streets and sidewalks. It's what you know a transportation department to be. We put some performance stats up for you to look at. I want you to look though at the 2008 to 2018 numbers. Just two numbers up there. 100 miles paved, about 80,000 potholes filled. Last year we repaired 53,000 potholes. In the last 4 months we've paved 40 miles. So we have a team that's performing very well, and they serve the city of Oakland, many of whom are Oakland residents, and are very proud about the work that they do. So really commend their efforts, and they're doing quite amazing work, and it's work that should be upheld and celebrated. The second side of the Oakland Department of Transportation is an area that's relatively new, and it's really new nationally. It's when you're looking at engineers as public health professionals. For really 2 generations, really since the advent of the automobile, we've seen streets that were designed for speed, and the speed has led to really dangerous behaviors and unsafe conditions for those of us who live, work, and play in these areas. And so we see these conditions every day. It's sideshows, it's speeding, it's illegal parking, it's all of the things that frustrate us, it's the things that damage our property, it's the things that really we want to rein in as a department that affect the quality of life as well as our health. And so these are the things that we're going to focus on. But I'll conclude with one ask today. Depending on what research you read, 80 to 90% of Americans speed. I don't think we talk enough about speeding, so I'm assuming everybody in here is in the 10%. You're my non-speeders. Go find 10 people and tell them to drive the speed limit. The physics is very clear. At 40 miles an hour, if I'm struck by a vehicle, I have a 10% chance of survival. At 20 miles an hour, I have a 90% chance of survival. So we don't talk enough about speeding, and you're going to hear a lot more from me about let's make Oakland a slow city. And I know that doesn't sound exciting, but we have to start slowing the traffic down. So thank you. Ran a little bit over.
All right, thank you so much, Director. We're going to get into the traffic questions and the traffic safety questions, but I'm going to back us up to the homeless encampments. There's specifically a couple of different questions about homeless encampments close to schools, and I know that they would like folks to talk about the prioritization of encampments near schools. It's one question. There's one specifically. I don't know if Harold, if you have anything specifically about the one on 45th Avenue in Bond that's right here next to Fremont High School.
Okay, so while I know that Marty's here, so in regards to our homeless encampments in the city of Oakland, you know, the first thing we did when we came into office last year, so we've only been in office for less than 2 years, is that remember Wood Street? A lot of the homeless folks, a lot, but not all of them, they were pushed out into Wood Street. There were hundreds of people, there were still residents out there that had to live next to this huge encampment. It was the largest encampment in Northern California. And so my deal is, look, I've been homeless before. Not once in my life was I looking for a plot of dirt to put a tent on. It is not dignified for you to live in a tent on a piece of dirt. What we were looking for, what I was looking for with my son, was affordable housing. Access to affordable housing. First month, last month, and deposit. And so with that being said, because we run with that value at the forefront, we were able to shut down that whole encampment. We gave services to people, and if they wanted to take it, they took it and it was given to them. Only 85% of the people who lived out on Wood Street took the resources. Yes, it comes with strengths, right? Some of those mean that you may not be able to utilize drugs on a certain site, but there are different sites for different groups of people. And so with that being said, that was actually taken down, and what's being built out there now is over 100 units of affordable housing. Under this administration, we're taking the housing prices seriously. Previously, you saw a lot of market rate go up. I can't afford that market rate. I'm a renter, right? And I don't know if many of you can afford that market rate. But what we are investing is $200 million into affordable housing. It will take time. Now remember the mandate that Governor Gavin Newsom put out. He said there's an executive order for you to remove encampments on state properties. That is state property. So if you start seeing that the plots next to the freeway is getting cleared, and then the encampments are moving where? Of course, to the city of Oakland. But yet, we don't have money to draw down to get the permanent supportive housing, because I think many of you will agree with me that many of the people who are on our streets cannot live on their own, cannot support themselves, and may have a lot of mental health issues. And again, this is the county that we have to demand to step up. To say you are the charge of health services. Like, you need to step up. And so what we're doing is we're getting, so once a Supreme Court case, right, passed just recently saying, actually, it's fine if you want to remove the homeless encampments if it's impeding on, you know, the different laws that we have on the books. And so what you'll start seeing now is that if you see a tent on the sidewalk, and mind you, we have a small group, a small team, but we're going out there and we are shutting down encampments. You are not going to be in the parks, because as a single mom, I would not trust my son to go out and play in that park if there was an encampment. I'm not interested in seeing whether or not this person is having a good day or not. It's not worth the risk. But we need to have that park accessible to our communities, right? And so you can't be in parks, you can't be on sidewalks. We will still give you shelter. We will still give you shelter. However, if you do not take shelter, we will have to forcefully remove you. This is about quality of life, but we will give you shelter. And that's the dignified piece of it, and that is what makes us a little different from what San Francisco is doing.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think Director Duffy was going to ask a specific question about the 1 year.
So just to be clear, before we shut down any encampment, we have always offered shelter and outreach, trying to pair people with services. That is the Oakland way to approach, to rid homelessness. And the thing is, here's the goal. If they stay on the street, they're going to be on the street. If they go into program, temporary shelter, they get wraparound services, they connect with the county, they have to do a housing plan that ultimately leads them to affordable housing. Now, in relation to the encampment very near here, I've been told that my staff, along with Macro, have gone out several times already to close that encampment. But here's what's changing. The mayor mentioned that the Supreme Court ruling gives us more authority now to clear and clean these encampments. I have been given the direction by the mayor and the administrator that to address these particular issues, I'm working very closely with the fire department and police department and in the high sensitivity areas. That includes the areas near schools. Those will be our focus, to immediately remove those encampments from those locations. As the mayor said, we will offer shelter. You can take it or not, but you're going to have to leave this location.
All right, so so the question is, and I think we might have done this in 301, but you can answer, is how are they able to designate or specify that this encampment is near a school? And can you talk about the encampment management policy that does prioritize schools?
Yes, so what you would do is you call Oak 301, or you would snap a picture with the Oak 301 app, and then you would simply say this: the school is near the encampment is near a high sensitivity zone. It's near a school. And our encampment management policy says there shall be no encampment next to a school. And so we would then deploy our resources based on priority of high sensitivity zones. And we would then go out to remove that encampment next to the school.
What I would encourage you to do is, this gentleman who's in charge will be here after this meeting, so I would encourage you to come up afterwards and maybe exchange information. That's why we're here, to be accessible to you all. We know the automated systems have their challenges, but specifically if there are folks here who work here or the ones who keep putting in the 311 requests, I would encourage you to stay after and let's have a conversation. We also have our staff here that's in charge of encampment management, right? He just came up to try to give some information. Okay, we're gonna go through, we're doing pretty good. We have about 15, 17 more minutes. I'm gonna try to get through as many of these as possible. I've been clustering them, so a lot of you have the same questions. So that one question covers maybe 5 or 6 people's questions, so that's how we're making some good ground here. I do wanna ask one more question about encampments. There's a question around what percentage do we think of these homeless encampments are folks coming from outside the city? And how is the city preparing for all the cities to move on these encampments at the same time?
So I'll let Harold answer the percentage. I'll talk about what are we doing prepared for this. And so what we're seeing is, like, in the point in time count, this is a biannual count where people go out and count how many of our unhoused communities live out there on the streets, right? Including in our shelters. Now you'll see, and the media has reported that all around that county, only Oakland has increased by what, I believe 19% or 9%. And what that means is, I'll tell you why. Oakland is the largest city in this county. The county will buy up or put money in or have nonprofits go and buy up, old hotels. There's one in District 7, right, the Care Campus. And then they receive, or the county, they receive all of these different people that are unhoused from across the whole city. But it's located here in Oakland. So of course our numbers are gonna look like it's increased. Now my question to the county, and it's still the question to the county, is it equitable? The way that they're dispersing funds from the county. Again, the City of Oakland, we do not have a public health department. We do not hold social services. That means that the federal money and the state monies for these services go straight to the county, and then the county disperses it to their cities. Now, there's one thing where it's like, sure, you can allocate funding according to population size, but is that equitable? Absolutely not. Not when all the programming is here in the City of Oakland, right? And so we deserve our fair share in regards to the equity portion of it. How many programs are we standing up relative to other cities? If other cities are receiving monies and they don't have any programs stood up for their homeless encampments or the unhoused community, then it's not fair. They shouldn't get $1 of that. Again, San Francisco is doing full-on sweeps. I can tell you that we are seeing some of those encampments being shifted out here to Oakland. I've directed my team collect all of the data. How did you get here? Who gave you money? Was it the government? Let's be honest. Did they pay for your BART ticket? Did you come from San Francisco? Because there is case law where cities have sued other cities in county for pushing their unhoused into other cities without any solutions. We cannot continue this business of accepting all the unhoused. Yes, we feel for the unhoused. Housing should be a human right. However, the city can't put it on our backs to continue this work. So we are getting lined up with our city attorney's office to push out some lawsuits if we need to, whether it be the county, whether it be other cities, or what have you.
So the City of Oakland represents 29% of Alameda County's population. But the City of Oakland has 58% of the homeless population. And the City of Oakland also has 58% of the beds for the homeless population. And so that kind of tells you that while we're 29% of the population, we're housing 58% of the unhoused in the City of Oakland. So that's kind of giving you the numbers of where we are. And now what we're doing is we're carrying the burden for the entire Alameda County. And where the county's void, Oakland's filling that gap in. Our goal is to handle this from a humanitarian standpoint, but it simply isn't fair that we're bearing the burden of the entire county of Alameda.
Thank you so much. The next questions, we're moving into traffic questions, so DOT and others can be ready for these. Lots of questions about international and the bus lane and the traffic violence that we're seeing there. What is the city doing to address that?
Yeah, so International or San Leandro Highway or East 14th, the various names, if you go back in time, this has been a troubling corridor. It's another fast, car-centric highway. The introduction of the BRT has certainly not helped that. So what we're doing is we're actually shifting resources within DOT to start addressing these issues that you see. And so we have statistics related to ridership within the corridor by segment. We have crash data by segment. We have fatality data by segment. And we're starting to break this down into smaller projects, seeing that we're probably going to be living with this one, I'm guessing, for about 3 to 5 years to get this under control. One of the first things I did when I started in Oakland was I walked about half of the corridor. I don't think we should be too quick to blame or condemn the center running BRT. It works very well in other cities and throughout the world. International's never been a bucolic country road. It's been very troubled for many years. It seems to have more challenges now. 2023 was certainly the worst year in probably the last 30. We've moved significant resources over. You've seen some of the posts that have been put out trying to delineate the difference between the bus lane and the vehicular lane. Time will tell if those work. I don't know if any of you saw the Instagram post of the gentleman who was driving over them in their car and basically saying, where the person who what he thought of the posts and what he thought of the people who installed them. We will be out in October installing speed cushions in the bus lane, trying to essentially discourage people from getting into the lane. I also think we have some operational issues in about half a dozen intersections that we're going to require a closer look into how they function. And then complicating things is part of the corridor is ours and part of it is Caltrans, so we're working to coordinate with them. There's not a quick, easy fix here. We're pulling the levers on what we can do now, but we're also setting the stage for longer term fixes. But we see this as a separate program. If you look at Oakland as a whole, from a crash perspective and a street fatality perspective, this is a major problem, and this is one we're going to fix, but it's going to take some time.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a few more questions around speeding, just generally speaking. Can you speak to how the city is addressing that in the different areas?
Yeah, so the thing to remember is we have spent, really since the 60s, building streets to connect suburban residences with downtown commercial centers. And the goal was to move cars as quickly as we could through these spaces. Now that we're filling back into the urban centers and people are actually living there, we're realizing maybe that wasn't the best thing we can do. And so when you look at things as simple as the city's paving program, we're trying to squeeze out as many safety improvements as we can make through those programs. Things like road diets. I think that's a very unfortunate phrase because nobody likes the word diet. But what we're doing is we're taking 4 lanes, converting it to 3. I'm happy to go nerd mode on you separately. The data shows that is a far superior safety configuration and it operates better from a traffic engineering perspective. Then we're getting back into the data and looking at where do we need to be restricting left turns, where do we need to be installing medians. I think there are bigger issues we need to talk about. We start looking at speeding. Is there really a legitimate purpose to have automobiles that go 100 miles an hour? I think Assemblyperson Scott Wiener had it right this past year with his legislation about putting speed governors in automobiles. Cities are being forced to spend millions of dollars over products that are putting out 700 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds of torque. So there's only so much we can do. We narrow streets, we attempt to shorten up turn radii, we look at restricting turns, where we're also going to be modifying our state safety standards and doing more speed humps. So there are things we can do from an engineering perspective, but I also believe we should be looking at those policy perspectives. There's another tool that we used during the pandemic with the slow streets that I think we need to bring back. Because closing streets can be an effective tool, keeping a lot of the cut-through traffic out of neighborhoods. I'm seeing troubling trends where traffic is just blitzing through neighborhoods because it's saving 12 seconds or 20 feet on their drive. And so we're going to be bringing more policy type discussions forward, both to the city council and to the General Assembly to address speeding specifically. Then lastly, I think there's a need just to bring public awareness to it. What speeding means, it's very dangerous. Our cars are very comfortable. We are cruising at speeds that I don't think we realize how dangerous it is. And I want to start just a public awareness campaign so that we become more aware, like I said earlier, at 20, 25 miles an hour, we are much, much safer, both as drivers, pedestrians, cyclists, than we are at 45 and 50. And so there's a lot that we can do in that space, but speed is a huge priority, and it's a core principle of an OPDOT to get our speeds down on our streets.
Thank you, Director Rowan. We have a few more minutes. I have one more question, and I wanted to talk about, or have either of you talk about the cameras, because there's been questions. It's related to speeding. So you can answer that, but then what's the difference between the speed cameras that are going up versus the flock cameras? And how does that work when this car doesn't have a license? These folks know what goes on, right? So it doesn't matter if we have a camera, if they don't have a license plate. Can we address that, please? Thank you.
Just want to jump in real quick with Josh, talking about the enforcement efforts that are going on the Blade and International. You have to understand that we have a traffic enforcement unit, that's a sergeant, 7 officers that are spending time down there, we're directing it down there. We are coordinated with the Alameda County Sheriff's Department, who is conducting enforcement action in regards to the bus lane. We also coordinate with CHP in regards to them conducting traffic enforcement activities on the international as well. So we are doing the enforcement piece as best as we can, but just like Josh said, we need people to slow down.
You want to talk about the
I'll
clock?
talk about the block cameras real quick. We talked about it a little bit earlier, the 290 cameras that we are installing within the city, the boundary of the City of Oakland. Again, it goes along with the over 400 cameras that are being installed throughout the Bay Area. We're using those block cameras for investigative purposes to help us identify individuals who are violating crime, and we can track where they're going to help us, put charges on those. I know Josh is doing more with the traffic enforcement cameras. That's not ours.
Can you talk about, Chief, how even if the car doesn't have a license plate, how Flock can pick up other characteristics to help identify the car?
Oh yeah. So these cameras are very good. And what we're, like I say, if a car has a specific, I'm giving away my secrets here.
Well, how about that there is that?
They're very good cameras.
I mean,
So
folks
even-
need to be convinced that
even
this
if
is
you don't have a license plate on the vehicle, if the vehicle has, a specific characteristic, the cameras are that well that we can identify vehicles through that, looking at specific characteristics of that camera, through that camera.
And that goes for sideshow participant vehicles as well.
I just want to add to that. So an example would be, let's say you were robbed with somebody who was driving and you see it's a Honda Civic 4-door, but its right fender is dented in. So you're telling the dispatcher, like, I saw there's a dent on the right fender. Well, what we can do from our side is that all these cameras are real time. We're not going back to try to collect from anywhere. It's like it lives over at the police department. And so in real time, all of these cameras can pull up any of these all the white Honda Civics or what have you, and then we can look to see which one could be the suspect. In other words, we're able to use this for illegal dumping too, and this is also the plan. Utilize the flock cameras, because right now we have illegal dumping cameras. I don't mean to put in air quotes, sorry, Harold, but it doesn't work if nobody's manning it, right? So what is the enforcement piece? When does that come into play? I'm really excited about the flock cameras because this is really real time. This is the very beginning seed work of what the ultimate potential could be, which is a real-time crime center at the police department for this East Bay region. We know crime is not stagnant. It is not only in Oakland. Crime goes through San Leandro, Alameda, to all the way to Fremont, what have you. We need to have a real-time crime center so that we can actually combat this crime regionally. So that's the flock cameras, and then I will let DOT talk about the speed cameras, which is completely different. The state is giving us about 480 cameras in total for the whole East Bay region. So every single on-ramp and off-ramp off of the freeway will have a camera. We'll have one of these flock cameras, and then we're working with the state and OPD are working together to pick hotspots throughout the city for the 290 cameras that are going up in this city.
And Director Roll, I need you to be brief with your answer.
Speed cameras are a pilot from the state. It's very specific how we install them, where we install them. We're putting in 18 cameras. We have to prove to them that they're reducing speeding.
Okay, great, awesome, thank you. And thank you for your questions. I tried to combine the camera questions because I wanted to make sure folks understand there's two different types of cameras and get your explanation there. Okay, so I'm going to move to we have a few more minutes. These questions aren't necessarily in any of these camps, but they're important. The first one is about our young people and the need for them to have safe places to be physically active, play sports, etc. Is there a plan to address the need for better, safer fields for our youth?
What I will say is, within our portfolios of responsibilities for the assistant city administrators, one of the key areas is just that, what we're talking about here. So our capital plan, which calls for addressing many of the needs of our field space, our ball fields, etc., that is a big emphasis. In order to address a lot of the safety issues, we need things for kids to do. I think this environment really calls for more. And I know that historically, Oakland has historically been just a place where you have athletes that come out of programs, but they have this place. So I just want to also take the time and acknowledge the work that PAL is doing with respect to track and field. Is there an opportunity to expand that? Yes. there is that opportunity to expand that. Have we started that process of really building that infrastructure at this point in time? We have not. And so I think that also lends itself to being an opportunity for us. One of the things that we did last year when the East Bay Panthers, when they had the issue at their field space, we worked very closely with their coaches and their teams to identify a different place for them to play because of the violence in and around where they were playing, we had to move those kids, and they lost many of the students that were participating in their program, and that's just an example of the impact that the violence and just community issues have on our kids, but also it lends itself to an opportunity of how we can utilize the existing funding that we have to better address the space needs that we need. So that's how I respond to that. I want to make sure I'm giving an honest answer, but not give too much sort of wishful thinking at this point in time. But as a part of our capital program, it calls for addressing some of the existing space needs across the city.
And aren't the parks also prioritizing the encampment management? The partnerships are excellent ideas. Thank you so much for that and pointing it out. I also just was going to say that I know the mayor just talked about prioritizing parks to get encampments out to create more spaces as well. But go ahead.
It's also, I'm going to be real clear here. The citizens passed a couple measures. One is Measure U, Measure KK, and Measure Q. So when you hear all these issues about the financial challenges that the city of Oakland has, and some of that's true, but when it comes to building infrastructure and maintaining parks, the citizens of Oakland passed measures, separate funding to do just that. So the idea, the concept of building new parks or maintaining parks, that's a separate funding model, separate from the general fund. And so there are resources that are available to be able to do exactly what the mayor and Mr. Johnson said. And that's in my portfolio, to make sure that that money is spent as quickly as possible, given back into the community.
I had that one. It was coming. Yeah. We got a couple more on the young people.
So I just want to add to your point about the parks. We are in partnership with many different private organizations that's started with the community. That's how the Oakland Baller Stadium started out, was community came to us. So if you have the idea, we can work together to make it and to come into fruition. What I can tell you is the World Cup is coming to the Bay Area, and so I'm working very closely with the planning committee to ensure, because usually what happens with the World Cup or Super Bowl or whatever have you come, especially specifically the World Cup, they will start donating soccer fields to different cities. And so we're looking in line to make sure that we get some of that funding to revamp our soccer fields, and then hoping to have people step up from the community and say, look, our soccer club will take care of the park. You guys come and do your weekly mowing of the lawn, but we'll be the stewards of this park. And so we love to have those conversations with you. Exactly. Yeah, we gotta definitely activate our parks.
Thank you so much. I know that the City of Oakland doesn't have direct jurisdiction over the schools, but many folks have been hearing. I know I got calls and text messages about the fact that the district done some testing on the water quality in their schools and their pipes. There's lead in the water. Not for all of them, but so if anyone has any communicated with the district about this, I know there's also a lead prevention JPA. I'm not sure, Councilmember Gallo, if you're on that or if there's some other leaders on that. But I just want to be clear, the city doesn't have direct jurisdiction over the schools, but has anyone been in conversation with any of the district leaders around any of that? Yeah. Okay, so we do have a member of our council here. Councilmember Gallo, can you raise your hand? He's on the JPA related to lead. I didn't even know we had a JPA related to lead until this story came out, but it's definitely something that's been on my radar. I've been in conversations. There's efforts, private fundraising efforts to get the water filters. There's at least one in every school now, but they're trying to double up on the schools that have lead. I just want to say I have two children, in 2 different high schools, and I got that email as a parent as well, that there's lead in the water that my children attend, and so it's definitely something that deserves some attention. We appreciate the question. Real quick, one of our young people wanted to know, this is a really quick question, just let me get it out real quick. How many people have to be somewhere for it to be considered an encampment? Just one? Okay, thanks. Got it? Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, about the lead issue, what I can commit to you is, working with Superintendent Kyla Johnson, and not just that, but working with the county, because the county will hold jurisdiction over public health, right? They have a public health department. And having lead in the water in this day and age, that is not okay. That is not okay, and I bet you anything that the lead is in schools that are in the flatlands, right? And so there's a huge disparity there, and so we need to come together, help organize our community, and we need to really demand for there to be something done, not only at the county, but have a conversation with the superintendent to see what we can do together as a city. Because even though I don't have jurisdiction over the OUSD, it's still the same people. It's still Oaklanders. And so we'll work together to make sure that we bring that up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really just want to offer another round of appreciations for y'all. We're to our last question, but this last question is about partnership between government and community. So I want to appreciate those folks who just, their question was, how can I help, or how can I participate, how can I roll up my sleeves and be a part of the solution? So I want to appreciate everyone who's there. We have our young people who have stepped up into leadership and trying to roll up their sleeves and get involved. So we have our neighborhood councils, right? And Principal Bias started off this evening by encouraging folks to join their neighborhood council. And this question is about trying to get OakDOT to come to those neighborhood council meetings. So traditionally, neighborhood councils were kind of focused more around police services, but over the last few years, we've moved that into the city administration office so that for this very point, because some neighborhoods and communities need traffic support, some have issues with illegal dumping, not everyone necessarily is needing a police response for everything. So the question is about investment in the neighborhood councils, and specifically around trying to get more CROs to be able to staff those. So what's our investment in the neighborhood councils, including CROs who are available for them, and trying to get OakDOT there? Everything neighborhood council go. Thank you.
Well, you're looking at OakDOT's engagement department, that's me. Let's talk afterwards. I get out as often as I can, attend as many events as I possibly can. I'm surprised actually that OakDOT doesn't have more resources to engage in the community. That's no excuse. Until we build up that team, I'm taking the lead in that. So if there are specific groups that want to meet, we'll get a schedule.
All right, great. And do you want to answer the CRO? Yeah.
So your neighborhood councils, you should see those as areas where you can come together to organize around anything, whether it's public safety, whether it's planning, a neighborhood cleanup or planning a block party. And then you should have a neighborhood services coordinator. I know that there's a few of those they're vacant. There's like a few vacancies with the neighborhood services coordinator, but those are your point person to actually lead your community group to the city. So say for instance, you want the Department of Transportation there and the director. The NSC is supposed to be able to get a hold of DOT so that they can come out at your next meeting, right? So that's the idea behind it. Whether you want the chief of police or the chief of fire, they probably, if they can't come, they'll send a representative. If done correctly, and this is all community run. We give you all a small little stipend. We wish we could give you more, but this is all community run. And if you wanted to print out flyers because you're having a community event, you would work with your NSCs to get it printed out at City Hall. And then they're supposed to go out, if you want them to help you with dispersing and flyering your neighborhood. It's all about community activation. Because again, with so many minimal resources, we all got to work together. Everybody has a role to play. And so that's where, I did a lot of walkthroughs with Josh Rowan when he came on board as director of DOT. And we go into community neighborhoods. I still have small meet and greets. So if your neighborhood wants to talk to me about a specific issue, whether it's a sideshow, and you want to bring me out, you tell me, you schedule it with me, and I've done this multiple times with communities all across Oakland. I will bring whoever you are having issues without me. If it's sideshow, I'm bringing Josh Rowan. And I look at him and I say, what are we going to do here? Give them a timeline. And sometimes I push them for 2 weeks. They'll say, Mayor, give us a month and we'll come back to this community, give them our ideas, we'll work with them and then implement something. Great, that's off of my books. And I will hear it if he doesn't get it done, because you will email me again and say it wasn't done. And so we do that hands-on work under this administration, and this is what I pride our administration on, is working directly with the community instead of just sitting at City Hall like other administrations. You know, we really love our community, and we are here for you, and we want to be out in the community with all of you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I know we're at time. We just have a few announcements / calls to action. One is we talked a lot about cleanliness. So the Adopt a Spot strategy is there. Can you all raise your hands and wave your hands? So again, if you want your neighborhood cleaned, do a deep cleanse, and then you sign up to keep it up. And they'll give you the tools to help you do that. And it's called Adopt a Spot. So the city comes as an initial clean, and then you and your neighbors keep it clean. That's right over there. The other call to action is AC alerts. If you all know what AC alerts, very important to sign up for those. It gives a lot of good information, especially in the case of emergencies. And then finally, just another reminder to make sure that we have your email so we can stay in touch. There were a number of questions that were very specific, didn't fall into necessarily one bucket. We're going to follow up. And so we want to make sure we have your email so that as these answers are emailed out, that you're a part of that. Thank you so much for making time to be here. I want to thank our leaders for making the time as well. And we're doing 2 more of these. So we'll be at Allen Temple on Thursday and in Chinatown at the Chinese Cultural Center on Friday night. And if you have specific questions for these folks, we'll be standing around for a few more minutes.